everyone. Welcome back to the Rustage Man and the Evan guy. Here he is.
What even is this intro anymore?
Well, this is the Rustage Anime Cast, where we talk about anime. If you're watching this, then you want to listen to us talk about anime. I just uploaded my... If you're watching this, then you will know that I have just uploaded my Joseph Joe style rap this Friday. And what we're going to do is whenever I cover an anime on my main channel, like a new anime I haven't rapped about before, like JoJo, then we will do a little episode where I talk about, where we talk about the anime in question and give our opinions on it and kind of give like a review of it. I have only watched, well, actually both of us, this applies to both of us, we have only watched part 1 and part 2 of JoJo. I still need to continue watching it, and I probably will at some point, but we wanted to give our pure first impressions review on both part 1 and part 2 of JoJo's without any knowledge of like the future parts and stuff. Like, it's the best time for us to talk about our opinions on this show.
It is. I mean,
okay. Off the bat, I have very complicated thoughts about this show. I don't know if I had high expectations, but people keep saying how good JoJo's is, and maybe it gets better in later parts. But I just remember people just instantly loving it. And people were saying part 1 was bad, but a lot of people said like part 2's their favorite part. And my general thing with JoJo, it seems to have a lot going on at once, well, but then nothing's going on at the same time. It seems to be equally like extravagant, but also boring to me. I don't know why.
I think the word you're looking for is bizarre.
No. Here's the thing. Here's my problem that I have, and it probably gets better in later seasons of JoJo, is that I don't think it's bizarre enough to justify how stupid it is plot-wise, story, like how boring the rest of it is, if that makes sense. Like, if they wanted to go for the whole kind of like over-the-top extreme side of things, I almost feel like it needs to be pushed further in that direction than it is.
So you watched like the individual episodes, correct?
Yeah, I watched. Yeah.
Okay, so I just watched the little re-edited
version. I don't know what they cut out, but
I wouldn't know what they cut out either. But I thought it was told well. In fact, I thought the first movie, which is part 1, was boring as hell.
Oh, it is. That's definitely way more boring.
Yeah, the last 2 movies were part 2, but in 2 parts. And I thought those are actually really good.
Okay. So, we'll do it chronologically, but I will say that part 2 wasn't actually that boring. I did, like, when I finished an episode, wanted to watch the next episode. Part 1, on the other hand, every time I finished an episode, I was like, ugh, there's another episode.
Yeah, I watched like the first 4 episodes individually of part 1, and I was like, this show is excruciating. I never want to watch it again.
I know that people say that JoJo's part 1 is either not that great or bad, or some people say, yeah, it's not that bad. But in general, people agree that it's not amazing, right? It's not great. And I have to agree with them. I did not enjoy it. I remember my brother got annoyed first episode or second episode because they were playing rugby wrong apparently, and so he stopped watching it just on principle. I don't think they were, but I don't know enough about rugby. I don't know. It's I don't know what to say specifically about the show in terms of part 1, but Jonathan's not super interesting as a character. He's very one note. I think the most interesting character is Dio, but it's not saying
absolutely
much.
Yeah, no, that is true.
And there's just this. I mean, it just seems like it's setting up everything. The first part, and that's
the
kind
first
of
part definitely is the entire setup.
And they introduced all of like the different things, like Hamon
and stuff. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it was just done in a really bad way.
Feel like
I feel
they could have been. I don't know if it's pacing is the right word, but I feel like they could have all done that differently. Like,
yeah,
they spent quite a lot of one episode explaining the backstory of these knights And I found it really funny that they painted Queen Elizabeth as like the villain and Mary Queen of Scots as like this hero, which is an interesting way to look at history.
I will say that doesn't happen in the re-edited part, so that's probably some of the bits they cut out.
Interesting.
Which, to be fair, I don't think that was necessary for the story at all.
If it wasn't in the re-edit. I'm not even going to lie, that was probably one of my favorite bits just because of how dumbfounded I was that they were kind of like trying to like rewrite history. And you had these two knights. They fought the two knights, right? So the two knights, Buford was one of them. I can't remember the other one. But they were knights of Mary Queen of Scots, and they had this whole backstory, like kind of weirdly lengthy backstory for minor villains about how they were executed, and they gave their lives so that their queen wouldn't be captured, but then their queen was already dead by the time they gave their lives, and they didn't realize it. And it was weird and kind of unnecessary, and I guess that's why they cut it out in the re-edit.
Yeah. I'm listening to this, I'm like, what are you talking about? Thought the entire thing was just about Hamon and Dio turning into a vampire.
I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm so stuck for things to say because I can't think of anything positive to say about the first part, but I guess I can't think of anything overly negative that, like, there wasn't anything that stuck out to me as, like, annoying. One thing that I was disappointed by is that everyone talked about how great of a character Speedwagon was. Like, I'd been on Rant Cafe a few times, and everyone's talking about how great Speedwagon is. I was like, oh man, Speedwagon must be cool. And what?
He's a
nothing.
Cool bro.
But
he's a cool bro.
He is only there for one reason, and that is to react to what JoJo is doing. He's the
hype man.
His entire character is just to react, and I get that. It's one of those things where you could criticize the show as much as you want, but then but if you take the angle of like, that's what they were trying to go for, and that's why it's good. Like the fact that he is nothing but a character that is reacting to everything that JoJo's doing is part of the joke. But again, I just don't think it goes far enough in that direction where I can excuse the fact that Speedwagon doesn't have any character.
I think Speedwagon is a great character.
Even in part 2, I didn't like him because in part 2, I was like, oh, he's going to be more interesting. And then he just takes up the exact same role.
The exact role?
Of being the guy that reacts to what JoJo's doing.
I just think Speedwagon is a great hype man. I think he's just the bro that's always there.
But he does nothing else.
He's the emotional support on the sideline, man. Don't you wish you had that?
Yeah, I do.
Exactly.
No. And I know I preface this as saying that a lot of people are going to get upset because I know a lot of people are huge JoJo fans. But yeah, part 1, I always get annoyed of the trope. And I'm not saying it's a bad trope, but I just can't watch it. At the very beginning of JoJo's where like one character is actively doing things to make the other character look bad or whatever. And like the father or like the authority figure is like, now you two get along. and it's like he can't realize it. At least it didn't last for very long. And yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really have much to say on part 1 either. I just thought it was just overall boring. I mean, like the entire point of part 1, I feel, again, obviously, was just to set up the whole Hamon system.
Which is weird, because if you think about it, like, in part 3, and I've already watched a couple episodes of part 3, but it almost feels like they stopped using Hamon, and it's all about stands now, which have nothing to do with Hamon.
I haven't seen any... that's the other thing I don't understand, because I know JoJo's is about stands or whatever, so when I was watching part 1 and part 2, I was like, what the fuck is this Hamon thing?
Yeah. And they took so much time to explain Hamon, where I feel like... It's one of those situations where you kind of have to have the explanation come later, if that makes sense. where you have to be interested in it first before you want to hear the explanation of it. And when they were explaining Hamon to me, I didn't care about it because they hadn't done anything with it yet. He had literally just given JoJo the power of Hamon, and then Zeppeli was all like, and this is the whole how it all works and yada yada. And my brother, I watched part 1 with my brother, and he hated I kind of found it boring, but my brother straight up hated it. He said it was like it was written by a 9-year-old. Like the show is, he said it was written by a 9-year-old and everyone thinks it's genius, even though it's one of those situations where, you know how like in English class, it's like the author says the curtain is blue and the English teacher is like making you write an essay and how like deep that is, when actually the author is just like, oh, the curtains were just blue. The curtain's
just blue, yeah.
Joshua was saying it feels similar to that, where actually it is just bad writing, but everyone thinks it's good because they think the author had a different intent than he actually did. The author actually, it almost feels like to me the author in part 1 was trying to create like a serious like show, but was so bad at it. As he continued into the other parts, he was like, you know what, I'm just going to fucking make it weirder.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's from the 80s, and to be fair, it does kind of read a bit like a really shitty 80s children's cartoon. It feels like it's for children, but with like adult themes. I don't know who the show is for, is what I was so confused about, because I felt like adults, it's way too simplistic and just boring for adults, but it's got too much like blood and violence and like sexual themes to be for kids.
Yeah.
But then again, it must be for like Japanese kids who are fine with blood and violence, because anime has that anyway. So I don't know, I just don't feel like I was the target audience, at least for part 1. Moving on to part 2, I expected it to get a lot better. And it did get better. But it's not that great still. If I were to rate part 1 was like a 4 out of, maybe even a 3 out of 10. Part 2 is like a 7 out of 10. I
don't think I really have any issues with part 2, honestly.
I can't... Okay.
I would agree with you that it's a 7 out of 10, but like it's definitely not as bad as part 1.
Well, actually, before we move on to part 2, one thing that, like a specific thing that annoyed me about part 1, so at the end of their fight with Dio on the rooftop or whatever, Dio shoots these laser beams out of his eyes, and JoJo puts his arms up to block them, and it goes through his arms, right? And it's like, at that point, JoJo realizes that those things will just go straight through his arms. Later, on the ship, Dio fires the beams again. JoJo sees him fire the beams. What the fuck does he do? He puts his arms up to block him. Why would he do that? He knows. JoJo has shown, like, if this show does anything, is it shows that the JoJos learn that, like, from previous encounters, how to deal with things in future encounters, right? Like, they had the whole thing where, like, people would get frozen by Dio, and then JoJo learned how to deal with that later, and it wasn't a problem anymore. Why would he put his arms up again? And obviously, the lasers go through his arms and fucking penetrate his neck. Just dodge him, idiot. Like, you know that's what's gonna happen. Why are you so dumb all of a sudden? You're so dumb all of a sudden where you need to die.
There's a lot of pseudo-intellectuality in the show, and, like...
It thinks it's smarter than it is. And, like...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. We're going to get so much hate. This is going to be our most disliked video. Okay, part 2, right. Again, so part 2 is better, and it has more over-the-top bits, and I could tell that he's going for a more over-the-top style, the author. But again, I feel like it's not over-the-top enough to excuse its sort of lack of character and stakes, and, like, just... Not until the very end with the whole plane into the volcano thing did I feel like it was over the top enough. Like, you got a tiny bit of it when he, like... There's, like, fragments of it, like when he pulls the machine gun out. But it feels like there's one of those scenes per episode. And it doesn't make up for the boringness that's in between them, I feel.
Again, me watching just the re-edits and not individual episodes, I felt that it was over the top throughout.
Okay. Well,
so I feel like people were right in saying that watching the re-edits were the best way to consume this show.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get to learn about Bluefoot's backstory.
I guess it wasn't important.
Something they cut out. there's some weird stuff that I didn't like, obviously. So one of the problems I have in general is that people keep saying it's like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 show. And I just kept expecting it to be, like Hunter x Hunter level or like One Piece level, right? But it just wasn't. And then I was like, okay, then it's supposed to be like a weird parody of shonen. And it's supposed to be really kind of exaggerated purpose. But there wasn't enough of that to make it interesting. It still was kind of generic.
Yeah.
And then what I did like was the fact that it's set in New York and and then it goes all over the world. They have like a prominent black character, which is quite cool. And this JoJo's a bit more interesting of a character.
He was a lot more interesting.
And he was a bit more fun to watch because he would just be a bit more of a wild
I will say I haven't seen the other parts yet, but he's definitely so far my favorite JoJo out of the
he's
two.
A lot of people's favorite JoJo, and I guess since he continues into the later parts as an older character, people really do like him, and that's why I'm rapping about him, because he won the poll, and I will enjoy doing the rap about it. Okay, so Speedwagon's back again just to be the guy that reacts.
I still think he's a good bro.
Okay, but he's there, and well, here's the thing, right? Is Scooter his name? I can't actually remember.
The black kid?
Yeah.
I think you might be right about that. I don't remember his name.
He felt like he was there, so when Speedwagon wasn't there, he would be the guy to react. I didn't actually feel like he had anything else besides that, which is kind of disappointing.
They were basically the same character.
They were, and I was like, when Speedwagon first revealed to die, I was like, okay, makes sense. Scooter's now going to be... Is Scooter his name?
I don't know. You're just making up names, Daniel.
Is it Scooter? It's not Scooter, is it? What's his name? Smokey. It's Smokey. It's not Scooter. Why the hell did I say Scooter? Smokey, I felt like was going to replace Speedwagon as just the bro character that reacts to everything JoJo did. And that kind of annoyed me at first. It was like, okay, it's just the same troops. Especially then when we got to another Zeppeli, I was like, okay, so it's just going to be the same characters again. Like, Caesar Zeppeli was a lot better than Baron von Zeppeli.
Yeah.
And I liked Caesar, though what bugged me about Caesar was it was so obvious that he was going to die.
I don't think so. Okay, again, I'm from the perspective of the re-edits.
Okay.
It did not seem like he was going to die.
The moment... Okay, even if it didn't seem like that, when it got to the point where it was like, I'm going to go into this dangerous thing by myself, then you were like, okay, yeah, he's going to die.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, at that point, that was like within like the last like 30 minutes of like the first movie re-edit or whatever. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure, he's definitely going to die.
Yeah. And I did like the fact that he didn't like JoJo at first. And you had that whole thing where it's like not everyone likes JoJo. And I like this JoJo having the quirk of... Can I just say that out of everything, my favorite thing about JoJo is the art style and the art design and that stuff. Like, I like the fact that when JoJo goes, Joseph goes, you are going to say this line, and then the enemy says the line, then realizes they said the line, it does a cool sort of effect on the screen, right? And it changes all the colors to show that they realize it. And the show has really interesting color theory, and everything art-wise in the anime is done very well. And visually, it's very good. And I will give it credit for that. I think it's done very well. I just didn't find the story interesting or compelling enough as I was watching it. I knew you knew what was going to happen. There wasn't that many twists. There was one twist, and they milked it. The one twist of part 2 was that Lisa was Joseph Joestar's mother, right? And at least maybe it's different in the re-edit, but at least in my version, you work it out first because they tell you stuff and it's like, oh yeah, you figure it out. Because you work out that Lisa is...
in the re-edit, that is never hinted once.
Okay. You find out that Lisa is like... his I don't know. You find out that Lisa
in the re-edit, this is explained in like a little like 30-second segment where like there's narration.
Is that really?
Oh yeah, there's like just narration. It's like, oh yeah, JoJo hadn't realized that Lisa was this person's daughter.
Oh, that
blah,
actually
blah,
really
blah,
sucks.
which makes it that Lisa is his mother. I was like, what?
Yeah, that feels like a worse way to do it. Actually,
it probably was a worse way to do it, because but like I
actually like the initial reveal of it, because they revealed it at first where they didn't actually explicitly said it, but you could put it together in your mind, because they revealed a bit more backstory about Joseph's dad, where then you can put it together that Lisa is his mum, right? But then, like, I think Speedwagon says it, and then Smokey tells it to Smokey, and Smokey says it, and then they keep talking about how, oh no, JoJo's gonna die before he realizes it's his mum. Oh no. And they say it like 7 times. They keep saying it. So like, JoJo is Lisa's your mum. JoJo, like, we know.
In the re-edit, that is only mentioned once by them. It's like, oh, he's not gonna realize it. And then Smokey goes, oh no. And then that's when the narration explains it. And that is it.
And I mean, that sounds better and worse. Like, worse because before that point, you would already have figured it out, because they kind of explain it to you already. But I guess after that point, they shouldn't say it anymore. And they just keep saying it. And I felt like it was like he had one good twist, and he wanted people to know that he had a good twist.
I feel like, in terms of like the general plot, like that was... yeah, it was kind of like a meh twist, but like I feel like every fight had an interesting twist.
A lot of the fights, JoJo just won by luck. I got annoyed at. And also...
well, it kind of makes sense, since what's his face imbued him with luck, right? And then he named the sword Pluck or whatever.
Oh, yeah. But that's in the first part.
That was in the first, but I feel like in a sense that traveled throughout the generation of the family or whatever.
Okay, I did like this JoJo being more tactful in his battles. And again, it's a decent show. And I don't want to knock it too much, because part 2 is actually pretty decent and I enjoyed watching it. I wasn't that bored. But it just wasn't, nothing about it. The story was pretty linear. And nothing about it really wowed me. And there were lots of stuff that kind of annoyed me. The fact that there were 4 pillar men, and then like 4 main fighters with Lisa, Caesar, JoJo, and Stronheim. We'll get to Stronheim in a second. And instead of having it where each of the characters kind of fight a different one, JoJo actually just fights all of them.
Yeah.
JoJo's the one that beats all of them.
Caesar got to fight.
Yeah, but he didn't beat him.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
Caesar fought AC/DC, that would have been way better, I feel. Like, if Caesar, like a later time, fought AC/DC and beat him, that would have been cool. And then JoJo fought Whamu, and beat him. Actually, let's talk about Stronheim for a second. He was an interesting character. And what's really weird about Stronheim is that the show keeps making you want to like him, because he keeps doing really cool stuff. And it's like, Stroheim's here. And you're like, yeah, this is a really cool character. You forget he's a Nazi. He's a Nazi.
Funny enough, right? Obviously, they introduce him as that in the re-edit as well. But he was definitely my favorite character.
Right. But that's the problem I have with him, is that he's the best character.
But he is a Nazi.
He shouldn't be.
I know. I agree. They literally start off like, oh, hey, he's German. He's a Nazi.
And not only that, but he does that thing where he kills a bunch of innocent people so he could fuel the rebirthing of that first Pillarman.
That is absolutely true.
So they set him up as a really bad guy.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, he gets his comeuppance, right? But then when he comes back as like robot person, and then he's really cool, and then he fights by their side, and especially on the bit
cool as shit when he's a robot, dude.
Right, and then he's in the airplane thing, and he's cool. The fact that he's cool, I feel, is a problem, because he was supposed to be a representation of how bad the Nazis were, and now all of a sudden he's the cool character that everyone likes, and that all of the characters are like, Stroheim, you're so cool. And even in the epilogue, they say Stroheim died honorably in battle. He's a Nazi. Yeah. He didn't die honorably in battle. What are you talking about? He's a Nazi.
It's okay. I get that. I feel the angle they were trying to go for was that he was making up for all his sins.
But no, he wasn't trying to like redeem himself for the bad things he did. He was just trying to stop the Pillarmen because they posed a threat to the world, including Germany, right? Because
exactly.
He was still fighting for the Nazis when he was fighting the Pillarmen. He was still like, for the fatherland, we're gonna kill the Nazis, and JoJo just had a common goals at that time. But I
get it. He didn't want the Pillarmen.
I don't think he was like atoning for his sins. At no point did it seem like he felt guilty about killing all those innocent people at the start. Like, I feel like at the end of it, he still would have done that, right?
Listen, I know it sounds like I'm fighting for the Nazi here. I'm not, okay?
He's a cool character. It's so weird. It's so weird. I don't know. And anyway. There were a lot of like fights that were kind of boring. Like, it's just like, for example, whilst JoJo and Lisa were going through the house to get to Wamuu and stuff, there's that one vampire who's like the door vampire that they fight. And I know it's used to showcase that Lisa's a strong fighter, but it goes on for way too long. And it's
okay. That's not in the re-edit, so I have no idea what you're talking about.
Here we go. That's another thing they cut from the re-edit. Yeah.
Probably because it wasn't important.
It probably isn't. But I mean, it's important because it shows you that Lisa is capable of fighting, is actually really, really strong, which she doesn't actually fight at all that much after that.
Yeah, she didn't fight at all in the re-edit.
In the re-edit, yeah. So I guess the scene is needed. It was just way too long and drawn out. Like, they needed to show that Lisa was strong. So that when she eventually does get defeated by Kars, it's more impactful. Because as it stands, her being defeated by Kars was about the same weight as the people, those two like randoms who got defeated by Wamuu and AC/DC at the, you know what I mean? The ones that, yeah. But it was better. Okay, there's a few little nitpicky things I want to point out. These are really nitpicky. So when the Pillarmen, actually, before we get to it, the music's very good. I'll just say that.
The music for like JoJo's is absolutely amazing. I love the
Pillarmen music is very good.
Is that the Egyptian sounding theme?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh gosh.
It is amazing, right? And I really like it. Some nitpicks. When the Pillarmen first appear, one of them goes crazy for a second because one of the others step in his shadow, right? There's this whole thing about how he hates people being in his shadow. It never comes up again.
That was never mentioned in the re-edit.
Okay, so it might have been. You might have just missed it because it was very small. But like, they did make a deal out of it, and it was like, it looked like a key flaw, like a flaw about one of these characters that in any other show, later on, JoJo would then remember that and use that as a way to outsmart and do something to beat him.
Never mentioned,
right?
In the re-edit.
But they completely forget about it. Especially Joseph's supposed to be like a master trickster, and it feels weird that he would forget about something like that. The other thing is that JoJo gets these clackers, which are like iconic for him, and like iconic weapons that he just doesn't use. He uses like, he barely uses them. You know what I'm talking about, right?
The clap? I don't know what you're talking about.
The clackers. The clackers. They're the two little balls.
I don't think I ever saw those.
Wait. Let me show you, because they're like, there's so much about them in the opening, and like they're supposed to be like his iconic weapon and stuff. He applies Hamon to these clackers. See?
Oh, okay, yeah. He does use those briefly.
Right. They're supposed to be like his thing. And then he just stops using them. They like, at least it might not even be in the re-edit, but they at least like go through a lengthy explanation about like why he's using them, and like he's like putting Hamon in them, and it's supposed to be really cool. And if you remember the opening, you won't because you wouldn't see the opening because it's in the re-edit. But in the opening, it had like the clackers were a big part of the opening, the symbolism of it. And I was like, oh, it's a cool weapon that he uses. But then he just doesn't use them in any of the final fights. Yeah. So it's like, why bring them up at all in the first place? The other thing that annoys me about JoJo in general is just the stupidity of villains anyway. Like, I get it. I know why... Okay. I know why, like, characters would be like, I'll leave you alive so that you could defeat me one day, sort of, so we can have a real fight. And I know
when he asked for like a month,
and it's like
that. I just thought that was really, really stupid. I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous.
I feel bad. I feel scared saying that that's stupid because.
No, it was stupid. Like that was one of the moments that pulled me out of the story and just made me like refer back to how dumb part 1 was. I was like, this is stupid.
I would have preferred it if he just like quote unquote died, but he was barely on the brink of life. You know, someone Stroheim maybe like revived him or something, and then he trains, and then gets back to him. Right? Even though that's still a stupid trope, I just don't like the fact that it doesn't feel realistic. I know we went into the backstory about like how Wamu's like a fighter and stuff, and like and it's it's realistic why he would not pop Caesar's bubble or whatever later, but just doesn't feel realistic for.
But JoJo wouldn't know any of that at that point.
Yeah,
like for him just to be like, oh my gosh, like,
that's a good point.
Hey, let me train for a month.
Yeah, like
no.
And like I get Wamu might have done it, but it feels weird that the other two, like especially Kaz, who later on is revealed that he doesn't care about honor or anything.
Exactly.
Right?
Especially
at that point, Kaz would have just killed him.
Yeah, thank you.
I agree. And it was annoying. It was annoying, and I didn't like it. Again, it was kind of enjoyable to watch. I did kept wanting to watch the next episode, but it just lacked the depth for me that makes me feel weird when people say it's like their favorite JoJo parts, or just people talking how much they like people that I like respect intellectually saying how much they like JoJo. And
I feel the redeeming thing about part 2 was it was definitely a lot more over the top than part 1.
Yeah.
And at least in the re-edit, there was never any downtime in how over the top things were. So I guess
maybe the re-edit helped.
Like every freaking moment of that re-edit, there was something happening that was well over the top, and I was like, "Wow, this is insane."
The other thing was they just made JoJo get off with that girl purely so that they could continue the lineage. There was nothing. There was nothing behind that. And I just wish they had some sort of like romantic B plot to at least make the Jonathan, for everything part 1 sucks on, at least Jonathan and Erina had some sort of chemistry, right? Yeah. I just wished that Joseph Joestar had like some sort of B plot into which he had this relationship, right? Because we knew that it was necessary for him to do so, for there to be other parts. Just wish it was not just at the end. Oh, and I've married this girl.
Oh, I met this girl. I married her. It's like, what?
He meets her earlier, obviously, but like very briefly, and it just annoys me. The whole thing.
Again, definitely a much better part than part 1, but still, it did have its flaws for sure. I'm definitely going to continue watching the show because
I think it gets. And I know people who really like part 4 and 5, and they say that those are like way better, and so I will keep watching. And a few episodes of part 3 I watched, I've kind of enjoyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's like it's in a weird middle ground for me where
I will say one thing about part 2 is the fact that like I don't in terms of the fights, right?
Yeah.
There's less actual battle and more mind games than anything.
Yeah, and that's kind of good. I like that. I just don't think...
I guess for me, right, like not knowing anything about the show, like I guess I assumed it's because these dudes are like big brawny men. I thought, oh, they're just gonna be punching the hell out of each other like in Dragon Ball or something. But no, it wasn't that. It was just, hey, I'm gonna use this attack and because it conducts him on.
Reminded me of one of the major problems I had with part 1, was that the fighting actually was super boring because they didn't actually do that much, but they over-explained every action.
Yeah,
it wasn't like Hunter x Hunter, where when they over-explain every action, it makes sense because there's a lot more. Intelligence behind each action in Hunter x Hunter when they're fighting each other. But with JoJo in part 1, it wasn't there. And they were over-explaining nothing. And in part 2, at least, especially Caesar versus Wamu, there was scenes where they just were fighting and it was like, okay, this is kind of exciting because they're just fighting. And then they had the trickery stuff that some of it, I feel like almost especially in the end of JoJo versus Wamu in the arena, where there's just this...
shoots the crossbow.
There's just a lot of weird like luck and like stuff where it's like, there's no way JoJo would have actually known.
No, I agree. He's like, oh, I saw you do it earlier, so I decided to try it too. It's like, what?
How does he know? I don't know, dude. Also, it feels weird that he beat AC/DC so much easier than Wamu when Wamu is supposed to be weaker than AC/DC. Like, they set that up.
Yeah.
Like, they're supposed... AC/DC, like,
was a calls... strange.
Wamu calls AC/DC, like, master and stuff.
Yeah.
But the fight against AC/DC was so easy. And then the fight against Wamu was, like, so difficult in comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Again, I don't think any of us think it's a bad show.
It's fine. It's 7 out of 10. It's decent. I enjoyed watching it. It just wasn't as like... It
wasn't as good as people hype it up to be.
You know, it's just like not on the level of like... I don't know. I just keep comparing it to Hunter x Hunter. Just not on the level of Hunter x Hunter or like anything like that.
I realized it existed before Hunter x Hunter, but in my mind, I felt like it was trying to be Hunter x Hunter. And then it just wasn't.
And I keep seeing reviews for it. And people are like 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. Some will say 9 out of 10, and people will be like, 9 out of 10, are you sure? You sure it's not a 10 out? Like, how can it be a 10 out of 10 for you? Like, I can understand enjoying it. It's just... there's just nothing. It's just so surface level. And it's not even... that's the thing. It's just, if it's trying to be a genuine shonen show, it's so surface level that it's not interesting enough. And if it's trying to be a parody of shonen, it's not a parody enough or ironic enough or bizarre or humorous or extravagant enough for that to work, right? It's somewhere in the middle where it's just both bland and and not at the same time. It doesn't know what it wants to be. And
for our listeners, this is in reference to the first 2 parts.
Yes, I don't know about the later parts. The later parts could be way better. I've heard they get more extravagant, more of a parody. That could work out well, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, whatever. Fuck it. Let's read some comments. This is gonna be so heavily disliked, this video, I swear to God. And people are going to get so mad. I'm not reading the comments on this one, unless they're nice comments. Let's go. I haven't even prepared bad. I'm just going to go look at the bad comments chat and just pick random ones. Here's one of my favorite bad comments. I'd say bad comments. They're not bad. They're just funny. I don't know why this is so funny to me. I'm going to have to send you the image for this one as well, because there's just something about how it looks that's funny as well. It's from Uchiha Sasuke, and it's Rustage, thanks, arigato for rapping singing for me.
What?
And then he has all these emojis and stuff. Arigato for singing for me. You're welcome. Uchiha Sasuke. he like spells out arigato like wrong in capital letters.
There are 2 A's in it.
Oh, okay. All right, let me show you this one. This one's so fucking funny, and I'm sorry for this is a bit inappropriate for people, but it's this kid who goes all in capitals on my Class 1A cipher because Nuxtaku is in it. Goes, yes, Nuxtaku. Oh, I come every time he says a word.
What? No, God, no. No. I don't know if they're a kid. It says 99 at the end. Hopefully they were born in 1999.
Hopefully. Did I read you this one? This one goes, my guy, it sounds like in the beginning you went from black to British.
That's great.
I love the 2 ethnicities. The 2 races. There's so much to unpack there. It's so funny.
There is. That's definitely a lot to think about.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching the anime cast with me, the Rustage man, and this guy. His name's Ebenito. Go subscribe to him on YouTube.
Please.
He does actually pretty decent content sometimes.
Sometimes, wow.
I don't watch all of them, but the ones he actually does good stuff. He's a funny guy when he has time to think about it and write.
Okay. I don't know if you're trying to be endearing or just insulting me.
Anyway, yeah, he's good, and he also looks very nice in his videos. Like when he has the camera that's high quality, and then he talks into it, and he looks like he could be on like one of those like multi-network anime channels that just have like a generic dude talk about anime at the camera who's like kind of attractive but not too attractive.
Again, I'm not sure if this is a compliment or not.
You know what I'm talking about? You know, like
like getting the robot.
Yeah, like getting the robot. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's or something like that, right? Would you talk? I feel like you could like talk at the camera and read a Watch Mojo script, and
I probably could. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, go subscribe to him.
And tell us if you guys want us to watch more JoJo's and talk about it.
We'll watch the later parts. We'll talk about them. Sure, they're fine. I don't know what the next episode is, but it's probably something. So keep your eyes out for it.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.